What's up, everybody? And we have, if you can imagine this, it's Slow Your Roll, episode 3. We're back live, and we have quite a few things to get into today. A lot of news, a lot of breaking news, but let's start with something that isn't breaking. It's kind of already broken for both the back of the Colorado Buffaloes, as well as the fact that this game has been final since about midday Saturday. So let's talk about it, though. Is Colorado and Oregon. Shedeur has a horrible game. 7 sacks. The Oregon Ducks record against the Colorado Buffaloes. Just completely blow Colorado out of the water. They have Dion backtracking a little bit, saying we weren't as good as we thought we were, and we're looking to get back to the drawing board. What were your takeaways from that game, and what transpired in Eugene? Because as you saw, the world set down in Eugene, Oregon for this game. A whole lot of highfalutin guests, a whole lot of energy and enthusiasm around the state of Oregon and the state of college football as a whole. So what were your takeaways?
I think it really just kind of showed how top-heavy Colorado is with those, transfers. Dion brought in his son, obviously, Shiloh, Travis Hunter. It kind of just showed there's no depth to that roster, taking all those sacks. The offensive line played horrible. I mean, you look at Shedeur, and he, turned the ball over 0 times?
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to get blown out that badly without turning the ball over. And I wouldn't go and say they're a poorly coached roster. I really just think it comes down to talent gap between them and Oregon, which is a very talented roster with a Heisman-level quarterback.
Yes.
Yeah, I think Colorado got humbled against Oregon, and we saw Oregon's coach before the game. He gave a pregame speech saying, they're fighting for clicks, we're fighting for wins, and that's exactly what happened. Oregon just totally annihilated Colorado, and I still think Colorado has a chance to be a really good team, but they got surely humbled on Saturday. It was very surprising, for sure.
And it's the other thing, too, is like Colorado's run of really, really tough games is not over.
No.
They have USC.
Without Travis Hunter still.
Right. And Shiloh Sanders is now out because he got bowled over in the Oregon game. Now, he's still led the game in tackles. Let's not take away that. But he's one who got knocked flat and had a what I believe was a kidney issue now.
Yeah, he was peeing blood for a few days after.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that's kind of a vile way of phrasing that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure I appreciate that detail from you and that gore for you.
Well, that's the injury detail we got.
I know.
That's the public news.
I understand. They went public by saying just that he was, excreting red liquid.
That's the politically correct way to put that.
And now, so let's face it, your best corner is out, your best wide receiver is out, and your best safety is out, 2 of which are the same player in Travis. They have to play USC, which USC looked really bad against Arizona State, but they still won by 2 scores.
Yes.
And put up 42 points, even though they looked like a team of junk. I mean, it was hot garbage, as we've heard, thrown around with 0 weight this year so far. So very interesting, but do you guys think they have a chance against SC?
No, I don't. Yeah.
I mean, there's just too much talent on that roster for USC top to bottom. And, I don't think that makes Colorado a bad team or in a bad position. They've already exceeded every expectation that was set for them in the preseason, so I don't think it should be necessarily held against them, or they should, hang their heads because they lose this game. It's the way everybody expected it to be.
Well, I wouldn't say they've necessarily exceeded every expectation in terms of the regular season. I agree with you in the preseason, but they still might only have 3 wins. I think if they can get to a bowl game, their season's a success.
Sure. That's understandable. Now that we've covered the Colorado news. Oh, actually, hold on. I just thought of one more thing.
Okay.
Did you guys notice how Travis Hunter and Hunter Blackburn kind of made up? And
they were hanging out.
Yeah. What did you guys think of that after we gave so much of a dissertation on it just last week?
That was good to see.
Props to Travis Hunter for, contacting and reaching out and them, making amends on that.
Yes. Now, let's stay in college football, though, folks, because there's an important one here, is Ohio State and Notre Dame, which made waves across the Big Ten country. I can say that confidently, and for good reason. Ohio State looked not very good, if I'm being frank, especially on the offensive side. Now, I would say the question is whether, and the question I'm posing to you two, is we know that Ohio State takes away a win from South Bend, which is hard to do. We know that that was kind of one that Notre Dame's coaching staff needed to say that they've arrived, as being a premier program under the tutelage of Freeman. But the other thing was what we saw a product of Ohio State's offensive success offensive woes, or Notre Dame's defensive success and prowess? Where do you guys think that stands?
I kind of say it's Ohio State's offensive woes. Just with under McCord, I feel like that QB switch from Stroud, it's shown, and that's shown against every level of competition they've played. Struggles scoring every single drive consistently against low-level programs that we didn't see while Stroud was there. So I think a lot of that was seen, and then it was just a defensive ball game overall. Really low scoring. What was the final score of that again?
17-14.
Yeah, 17-14. Yeah. So obviously really low scoring.
And you know what a lot of people are likening the result of this game to is the Bush push, 2005. With Liner getting in on the same end zone actually, with the same sort of aura to the final drive. With that being said, I think that USC team is a lot better than either one of those two teams were. I think that also that Notre Dame team from 2004 is not nearly as good as they are this year. And, of course, there's a whole different level of media coverage and all that. But the final drive looked largely similar. That was what kind of proved to me that McCord can be the guy the rest of the ways, because he conducted that offense fantastically. What were your takeaways from that last 2 minutes?
The last drive, he got away with a couple mistakes. He had a dropped pick right in the red zone that could have ended the game right there. And that was a big one they talked about for a minute. Tried to go to the end zone a couple times to Marvin Harrison Jr., obviously, best weapon. And then eventually, once they got down to the goal line, they were able to bank on the run game. And I think that's what it came down to.
Is Sam Hartman still eligible for the Heisman?
I'd say he's still in the running, but he'd have to have a really good game against a team like USC or
which is coming up.
I think it would take winning out as well.
Okay, yeah, understood.
But that was the game where if Notre Dame was going to win that game at home, that was the game where he was going to make a case that he could be a Heisman Trophy type player.
Yes. Do you guys think that Washington should be rated as the #1 team in America, which they have largely been this week?
Yeah, I definitely think they're in the running. I do not think Georgia should be #1, and I don't think Michigan should be #2. I think teams that have played good caliber teams like Texas has beaten Alabama. Florida State has beaten LSU, Washington. They've looked really good with Michael Penix. I think Washington could be up in that top 3 right now. I want to put them at 1 because they haven't necessarily played someone like an LSU or like an Alabama.
Sure.
They have that coming up with Oregon. But yeah, I think they definitely should be ranked higher than they are right now. It just goes to show that these preseason rankings really, at the end of the day, they don't matter. Because, who has Georgia played? Who has Michigan played? They've played nobody.
You're right. I agree.
I agree with you too, Caden. Honestly, I think I'd like to put Washington at #2 if, I had to say at the end of the day. I think it's tough to move Georgia off the #1 spot with the monstrous winning streak they're on. It's tough to, punish a program that has just done nothing but win for the past 2 seasons and be like, oh, well, you didn't look that great against so-and-so. I think that's a weak reason to move a team from #1 when they're on a 18, 19-game winning streak.
Yeah,
yes,
that's fair. I totally agree with you to that. But a team like Michigan, and I think Michigan, they still can get it right, just like how we saw last year. I still think they're one of the favorites to win the Big Ten, and I think they will win the Big Ten.
Sure.
But as of right now, with what I've seen against teams like Bowling Green, where J.J. McCarthy had 3 interceptions, UNLV, East Carolina, Rutgers, they started out pretty slow. And I get Harbaugh not being there. You don't have your head coach. You finally got Harbaugh back last week, and it showed that you looked a lot better than you did the first 3 weeks of the season. But Michigan, in no way, in my opinion, should be a top 5 team right now. Nonetheless, #2.
Yeah, that all makes sense. I get that. And, I think this is an interesting juncture of the year because we still have a long way to go with this season, but we're starting to gain some clarity on all that. So that's been cool to see. But let's flip the script a little bit and let's go on to the NBA, which is an incredible switch up from where we've been at and what we've spoken on so far. But big time breaking news. And this is what we've talked about at the outset of the show in terms of breaking news, things that maybe some of you out there listening don't necessarily know the full scoop on per se. So let's get right into it. Damian Lillard is now a Milwaukee Buck.
Unbelievable.
Tell me more.
I don't think anybody saw this coming. He would have told him that 2 months ago when he requested the trade. I think it was, a matter of time as to him getting traded to Miami in everybody's eyes at that point in time. So, just a complete switch up in the past 3 days as the Raptors got in on the sweepstakes and all these teams were calling now that they're like, we're not going to the Heat. And, it really just came out of nowhere one day and then boom, just like that, blockbuster trade.
That's it.
Yeah. It definitely it definitely makes the Milwaukee Bucks one of the favorites to win the NBA championship, especially when you have Giannis there too. In terms of the details, Chris Middleton as well. In terms of the details of the trade, I think the Suns got a lot back. I think they got more depth, which they need, and the Blazers, they got Drew Holiday and DeAndre Ayton. So yeah, I think all sides of the three-way trade, they got a good return.
I think the Bucks got away with highway robbery, in my opinion. They essentially traded Drew Holiday, a first-round pick, and Grayson Allen for a guy that's coming off the season averaging 32 and 7. That seems like nearly nothing in comparison.
Yeah. Okay. I hear that. What was going through, Jet? I want to hear you specifically.
Okay.
Given that you're somebody who's from the West Coast and has grown up a Blazer fan,
yeah,
when you and obviously have been following Portland forever, given that we're both from right outside there,
absolutely.
What was your mindset when you saw that there was a finality to it, that it was done, that it had been processed, that he was no longer a member of the Blazers?
It hadn't fully set in at that point in time, especially with how quiet talks had gotten for a couple months. I was like, well, if we don't trade him, there's no way this guy's not going to show up to camp. I mean, he's a professional. I don't think he carries himself like a dude that's going to hold out and not play. And he's going to play for Milwaukee, obviously. It's not like, everybody was talking about how if he doesn't go to Miami, he's going to request a trade immediately. And I don't think he's like that. So I think I kind of knew that no matter the situation, he would just deal with it.
Yeah.
But, just kind of finally, seeing it come to an end kind of put a new perspective on his time there and what his time is going to look like now that he's in a new home.
Yeah, Damian Lillard has proven, especially where in the NBA where we see all these players hopping all over the place every single year. Damian Lillard has proven that he is probably one of the most loyal guys in the NBA right now. I mean, he was with that Trailblazers team for 11 seasons?
11 years, yeah.
And that he gave everything to that franchise. Yeah, just proves how loyal a player Damian Lillard really is.
Absolutely.
Now, the question becomes, when is the first matchup where Dame comes home?
I couldn't give you the date on that.
No.
Yeah, too early to speculate, but I would assume it would probably be middle of the season, maybe even before the new year.
Well, considering the schedule hasn't dropped, I think they're going to make that thing prime and center opening night, something like that.
Yeah. And plus, you got the whole play-in tournament, too. So
Sure. Yeah.
It might not even, if it's not opening night, it might be later in the season.
So I think we know this leaves the Milwaukee Bucks as championship contenders for years to come.
Yeah.
Where does this leave the Portland Trailblazers?
They're in a rebuilding phase, I would say, right now. I mean, you lose Damian Lillard. I mean, you weren't even, playoff caliber with him last year. So they're going to have to rebuild their franchise and maybe find another guy that'll be there for another 11 years.
Yeah, I think I was speaking about this with a friend of mine the other day. I say the other day, yesterday, as it had made waves. But with Anfernee Simons and Scoop, and now with DeAndre Ayton, and Drew especially, it's interesting. I think that, honestly, I believe that Portland is in a better place than people think. But I don't think it's good enough to win much of anything.
Yeah, I agree.
And so that's where it gets interesting. It's like you have a core, some would say,
Yes.
but you're also not good enough. And so what do?
Yeah.
The answer, I just don't know. But I think the truth is, I think Portland is better off than most people will give them credit for.
I mean, yeah, they're going to be able to field the starting five of Scoot, Simons, Sharp, Grant, and Aiden.
Which isn't horrible.
Which isn't horrible. I would not say that's the worst starting five in the league by any means.
Not even close.
Not yet.
No. I mean, that might be approaching the top half.
Yeah.
I would say.
They could definitely be one of those teams next year that could, I think, flirt with like the play-in game.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, I'd put the floor at about the 12-13 seed, the ceiling at about the 7-6 seed.
Interesting.
Okay.
I think it's a wide range, you know, because we don't know what kind of player Scoot's going to be.
Sure.
I mean, for all we know, if he's, you know, a generational player, you could be looking at a 7 seed. But, you know, if he can't score well, can't shoot the ball well, like people are saying, that's when you get towards 13 or 12.
Yeah. Okay. I see that. And then from then on, the narrative becomes who do you pursue in free agency?
Who can you pursue when you're a small market team like Portland as
Right.
well?
Right.
Yeah, Portland's one of those franchises is you're not going to be. They're like a Detroit. You can't build for free agency. You're going to have to
No.
build for the draft and hope you can build the right enough core where you can keep all these guys and potentially compete for a championship.
And
Yes.
mind that drafting in the NBA is, you know, especially just in the first round, it's harder than pretty much every other sport on hitting those picks. Once you get outside of like the top 10, you know, 20%, 15% of those dudes will really hit and make an impact at their careers.
It's either hit or miss.
Yes. So, now that we've kind of, I don't know, beaten that one to a pulp a little bit
Absolutely.
with the Blazers, but we had to cover it. I mean, that's
How did you
new
know?
news. Yeah. Where do you guys want to head with the NFL?
I mean, I think it's the elephant in the room is the 70 points that Miami put up
I
last
would
weekend.
agree. I would agree. That's really good.
What do y'all think of that?
How about the Broncos all off season? They get a new head coach. They get Sean Payton, the guy who has won a Super Bowl, has proven to be a great coach, has won in the playoffs.
Traded picks for him.
Yeah, traded picks, and then you start off 0-3, just like last year.
I don't mean to make a pun, but I will. Peyton rode up into Denver on a high horse and just got knocked off the pedestal.
Yes.
I mean, without a shadow of a doubt. My favorite story to come out of all of this is that the Broncos didn't even interview McDaniel, who was a guy who had been within that organization as a coach's
He's the
assistant
ball boy, yeah.
as far back. You're right. So I'll just lead with that. As a ball boy, as far back as a coaching assistant, and then eligible for being interviewed, not even looked at, and now just lays down the law against them, you know, on Sunday.
Yeah.
It's poetic justice. And I think what's so good about sports is that there's always the capability that will happen, that you'll have a revenge story, that you'll take, you know, somebody not getting a chance and they use it as fuel to greatness. That's what we saw, I truly believe, in their preparation and the way that they went about game planning for this one. Of course, we haven't necessarily heard of anything specific about McDaniel saying, I need this game, but you have to wonder, did he think that way? My venture would say probably.
The one quote I did see after the game from him following is they had an opportunity to kick a field goal to break the scoring record, and out of respect, he decided to not kick that field goal. And he said that. So, you know, it's hard to know what went into, you know, putting up 70 points because, you know, you could have just ran the ball out and done practically nothing for the entirety of that second half, and the game would have been close. So, I mean, there were some big runs in that second half, too, that are like, oh, do you want to just fall down? Like, you're not going to ask that of a player because that's, you know, that's their contract you start to mess with when you're saying don't really do anything in the second half.
You're right.
So.
And then another thing, I don't know if you guys saw this. I don't know if it was Sean Payton or someone else on the Broncos coaching staff. Apparently, one of them said last year, I don't know if it was Sean Payton or someone else, that Tua would be benched
Wow.
Yeah.
And apparently he took that personally because he dropped 70 on the Broncos.
Yeah, throwing for 300 plus, many touchdowns. What do you think about Raheem Mostert scoring 4 times?
And A-Chain, too. They both
right.
scored 4 times. 2 running backs on the same team scored 4 times.
Crazy.
If you can believe that.
What? Break that down for me. How were they both utilized?
I mean, both broke off some big runs in that game. A-Chain, I remember, I think he had like a 60-yarder. And then, they were used in the short passing work as well.
Sure.
But it's a committee, so, one guy gets a couple touches, next guy gets the next couple. And then, when you're up by that much, the touches just keep pouring to both those guys.
Sure.
And they keep dominating. And I think it really shows how poor the defensive game plan for the Broncos was. It's difficult to allow a team to score 70 points on you in the NFL.
Especially when it hasn't happened since like 1966.
And there was some talent on that Broncos defense. You have Pat Surtain,
Right.
is argued to be one of the best, if not the best, corner in the NFL. And then a guy like Justin Simmons, who's good every single year.
Yes. Yeah. No, it was remarkable. We're still, let's face it, this is Thursday, and I still don't know quite how that matriculated into a 70-point game.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anywhere else we want to go within the NFL? Because let's be real about it. We've covered it pretty well the first couple weeks.
Absolutely.
But I'm just thinking, that was the big storyline. What about the Jets? Have we had any news out of New York?
They signed Trevor Siemian.
Which, that's news. That's news. That's a Broncos connection, actually.
Yeah. But I'm not sure it's going to make all that much of a difference.
No.
I mean, maybe it'll be better than Zach Wilson, but I don't think it's going to get you any better.
I feel like it's at a point where you try and make a trade for a guy like Trey Lance or Will Greer, one of those guys. Do something. It's not working over and over again. That locker room is going to be lost in the next 2 weeks if they just sit there and let Zach Wilson, go 10 for 24 with 2 picks every game.
Can't do it.
You can't.
What about Will Levis?
I think he's getting that starting job in Tennessee pretty soon with the way Ryan Tannehill's playing.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah. That leaves Malik Willis, though.
I personally liked Willis leading up to last year's draft more than I liked Levis coming into this year's draft.
Yeah.
And everything I've heard in camp hasn't changed that. So I think I still would like Willis to get that shot. I don't think he will, but I would like for him to.
Well, if you're the Jets, do you go after Willis, or are the Titans willing to give that up? That's the thing.
Or if Tannehill gets kicked to the curb, do you
pick up him?
He can't be worse than Zach Wilson.
I
wouldn't think he would be.
No. That's intriguing.
There's lots of avenues the Jets could look into that they have not even tried to, at least to the public.
Yeah. Let's talk about college hoop.
Okay.
And here's why I say that. That's completely off the rails from where we've been at. We didn't even talk about this, but I want to hear your take. Cohen Carr for Michigan State. We talked about him with the jumping over the car video a few weeks ago. Wearing number 55. What in the world is that? Are you serious?
It's a weird number to wear, I'll tell you that much. That's all I can say.
That's all I can say, dude. That is a very interesting number that he chose, for sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's meaning behind it that we will come find in the next 2 months.
Yeah, I agree. But no.
Mark those calendars for the start of the basketball
because
season.
We need it.
Yeah, it's coming. Rothstein, a guy on Twitter, John Rothstein, I think, is a major collegiate hoop analyst. He posts every day the number of days until the college basketball season opens, and I love it because it's now, shrinking ever so quickly.
One thing we didn't cover that I wanted to get into was the amount of injuries that are taking place every single week across the NFL.
I'm glad you reminded me.
And that didn't stop this past season. Mike Williams, torn ACL, out for the year.
Yeah, it's horrible. How many ACLs is that? Isn't that like 4?
Something like that.
Yeah, I think it's 4 or 5.
There's a couple Achilles too. Yeah. Dobbins, Rogers.
Yeah. Well, right. Yes.
And it doesn't seem to be. It seems to almost be going for all of the big names. This bug. I haven't heard a bunch about mid-level guys getting ACLs or anything. These are all top-level guys that it's happening to.
Yeah, for sure. Now, is that a playing surface argument, or what is that?
I think some would argue it would be, for sure. Some would argue it would be the turf, because I know with college you're not necessarily having this problem as much as the NFL. So some could say it could be the turf that the NFL is using.
I think in some cases it can increase the odds, but I promise you the turf didn't cause Nick Chubb's injury
No,
or anything like that.
Well, no.
Point being, my point with that being, yes, there is a problem with the turf, but there also appears to be just an uptick in injuries this year to an extreme.
For sure. So, how would you go about remedying that?
I mean, some of it's just, football. You can't stop it. Like, I mean, I think you can stretch. Be more cautious with who's playing and who's not. That's not going to stop those severe injuries from happening, though. So it's it's just really unfortunate to see those top level guys go down and potentially have careers altered as a result, and seasons altered for whole teams when there's cases like the Jets. Their whole teams being held back by that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Huh. What did you think about having seen what happened to Chubb? What was going on there? What is to say about that?
I mean, obviously, I felt horrible for the guy. That's it's incredibly difficult to go through. But when that happens to a running back, you start to think, is that the end of his career? I mean, he wasn't a young running back by any means. He's 26, 27?
Yeah.
So that's about the end of the shelf life for a running back. And now he just had this gruesome injury for the second time in his career. How can you come back from that? And not even that, is it worth it to come back for that, for the horrible pay that teams are going to provide you when you do come back?
Yeah.
Well, that's neither here nor there, because would you regard millions of dollars as horrible? I mean,
for when I already have millions and I'm battling through years of physical therapy, maybe I would call that a little. Right now, though, I would call that quite a bit as I sit here with $47 in my bank account.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, that's what the whole argument is,
Absolutely.
right? Is like, it's not horrible.
It's not.
I mean, it's life altering.
Yeah.
If you handle that the right way. But I do agree. That makes
Yeah.
perfect sense. That you put in that work, and then you're rewarded with what? I mean, the lowest, average salary for that position ever. I mean, by relative standards to everyone else, is crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just diminishing returns. That's really what it is.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I hear that. Anywhere else, boys?
Peyton, do you have anything you wanted to add?
I think I'm good.
I think I'm good too.
Okay, that's it for us. Wow, that was crazy.
I think that's it for you.
Yeah, I think we need to wrap up here. No, that's it for us on Slow Your Roll Week 3. And we appreciate you guys for being with us. And we'll come back as soon as possible, which should just be next Thursday, next Friday or so.
A short 7 days.
Yeah. Dependent on, all things that we have to take into consideration before we can come back. But with that being said, look for us on different social media platforms. We certainly have an active Instagram account. Twitter we're getting rolling with. A little bit of short action on YouTube, maybe in the works. And that's kind of where we can leave it off for today. So thank you guys for tuning in. And we'll see you next week.
Peace out.
Peace out.